Hey guys, Dr. Sean here. We're going to talk this morning about PCOS. So we're going to wait for you guys to kind of join in with me here a little bit this morning. I don't get a chance to do a lot of lives, so I like to do them when I get the opportunity to. And you know, it's a beautiful day outside. You can see the sun as I work into it there. I'm looking out across my office window here. I've got a beautiful pond out there I can see. It's an invigorating, fun, fantastic feeling. And, you know, it's about living life, right? That's what this is all about. So we're going to talk a little bit about an article that came out this week. The article was describing polycystic ovarian syndrome. So we're looking at this and we're thinking, so, all right, what does that mean? What is that? Polycystic ovarian. They don't know. And that's the first thing we start with. They don't know. And the article is discussing how can PCOS affect your gut flora. Right? Is there a possibility there's a link between what's inside your belly and what's going on inside the rest of you? And we're learning now that there is a link, and they did a great study on this. They were looking at microbes and all these things, all the flora that's normally found in our intestinal tract, and they're finding there's a direct link between this and how you're feeling, especially when it comes to polycystic ovarian syndrome. So basically, what is it, right? It's a combination of things. It's kind of like saying you have metabolic syndrome, which is a mix of blood pressure and weight and insulin and so on. Well, polycystic ovarian syndrome, guys, it follows the same pattern. And this is what's so cool about this. It follows the same model. It's a combination of things. It can be extreme discomfort, heavy menstrual cycles. You can get little pockets or cysts, little fluid-filled cysts that occur in there. It's the number one cause of female infertility. Number one. And over 5 million women in this country. And we're talking childbearing years now. So you're looking roughly 16 to 40 suffer from it. 5 million. And that's on the low side is my guess. Now, why is it on the low side? Aside from the pain, the discomfort, how it affects fertility, all the secondary things that come with this, and the heavy clotting and the heavy cycles. And so you know you're miserable, you don't feel good. Aside from the emotional stress of the infertility, they don't have a test for it. There's no definitive test to say that's what you have. You got PCOS. All right, well, if we don't know how to look for it, then we have to guess. Right, I have a rule in my practice. I follow a good friend of mine, Dr. Naputi. You'll see him periodically on here with me doing Facebook Lives. We always discuss this back and forth, right? To see is to know, to not see is to guess. So in this case, we're looking at something, we're saying, well, we're guessing. We don't have a diagnostic test. We've got several things we can do. We can run a manual exam. We can check a hormone panel. We can look for inflammation. We can look for all these things, but there's no real telltale, hey, this is why you have PCOS. Now, as we go through it and we say, well, this new study saying, what about the gut flora? What they found in this. Now, we got this new thing called a microbiome. It's the community that lives inside your gut. And that community, the more diverse it is, the more balanced it is, the healthier you feel. What we found in this new study, it's amazing stuff, that the PCOS condition has a very stagnant community. Not a lot of variety, not a lot of different microbes down there. There's a few that tend to dominate. Now, when this is allowed to happen, we have to have these things to keep the body in what they call a symbiotic relationship, a balance, a harmony. We use things from different floras and bacterias and yeast and things that live in our gut. Our body lives with these things, and we use different bits and pieces, and we give things to it. But if you've only got two kinds down there, when you need Baskin-Robbins 33 flavors, we get in trouble. And that's what's going on with this thing. So we're learning that, gosh, we're lacking the variety in this group of women that's not seen in everybody else. So there's a link. Now the question is why? So the study went on to further look and say, well, it's the androgens. It's the male dominant hormones in there that might be doing this. Now we look at that and we think, okay, well that's pretty common, right? When we see PCOS, sometimes we'll see hair and facial growth in these women. That's a more male dominated hormone, right? They call hirsutism. And that will sometimes show up in these cases. It's not always, but sometimes. And we say, well, there's too much hormone. So the answer, of course, is what? Give them more hormone. Right? You got too much male, give them more female hormone. Try to balance these things out. But it doesn't work. And if you look on Mayo Clinic's website, they're telling you immediately lifestyle change is the #1 recommendation for this. Well, guys, here's the trick. You can do something for it. Now, you look at lifestyle, you look at medications, you look at sometimes they'll use electrolysis to burn off the little hairs that you get from the herds. Who wants to go through that? And more hormone, what does that mean? Birth control pills, right? They're going to put those in there to balance it. Maybe progesterone suppositories or creams. Maybe they'll go as far as throwing Clomid in there, right? Because of the infertility component to this. So as you look at PCOS and you think, all right, how do I know if I have it? They don't have a test for it. We have to kind of guess. And when you're diagnosed with it, what are you really diagnosed with? A guess, because there's no test. So we look at that and we say, well, what does this mean to me? It means I've got discomfort, I've got pain, I'm miserable, I don't feel good, my cycles are heavy, maybe I'm moody when that happens, right? But what is all this about? Is it your genes? No. And they try to link it to that a little bit, but they can't seem to find one. We know it's metabolic. They say lifestyle. Oh, maybe it has something to do with what we eat. Maybe it has something to do with how our bodies choose to digest our food and break it down. Because we know that those gut flora, those microbes that are down there, they come in this way. They're not there naturally. We have to populate that gut over a lifetime. And we've learned that if you go around the world, different cultures have different communities living in them. So if you're in Antarctica with a group of penguins, theirs is going to be different than if you're in Siberia, or if you're in Northern Africa, or if you're off in Ireland someplace. There are different microbes for different spots in the world to help break down different diets. So then we say, well, gosh, that means diet might play a huge role in PCOS. And all of a sudden we start thinking, well, how would we ever know? Now, I know in my practice, guys, I run a 24-hour urinalysis. It's an integrated urinalysis panel. It lets me know, what is your body holding on to? What is it throwing away? So if you're bringing food in this world that we have today of all kinds of processed, man-made, GMO-type foods, high sugar content, lots of salts and fats and things to make us crave, what if they're feeding the bear? What if all of a sudden we look at infertility rates and we notice in the last 50 years, infertility has gone way up? Not just a casual, oh, it's increased. It's exponentially higher today than 50 years ago. Then all you got to do is look and say, why? Isn't that the question you should always ask? Why? Mrs. Smith, you have PCOS. Well, Doc, why? Well, we think it's because of this, that, and so on. Well, why would that do that? And the crickets. Right, guys, if you can't figure out the why, how do you ever help anybody? You got to go back. You got to look. Now, you'll see my poster here in the background, right? It says stress across the top of it there. That's what I believe is the cause of almost everything that goes wrong with us. Stress is the cause of all disease, but there's different kinds. And ironically, for PCOS, we're looking at this saying, well, what would be a great cause of stress in women? Men! That's easy, right? Guys are the reason this all goes wrong. There's mechanical things that go wrong with us, right? Structural stuff. Maybe there's something wrong with the pelvic floor. Maybe there's something wrong with the muscles that make up the pelvic floor, right? All your doctors tell you, hey, do Kegels, do this, do that. It's a muscle, guys. Maybe there's something wrong with our emotions. Maybe it's something that we internalize. Maybe we're super stressed out. We're a mom. We're raising 3 kids. We had a hard pregnancy. We're not eating well. That's the end. That's our nutrition. And all of a sudden, we're just overwhelmed. And your body's like, look, man, I don't have the parts to deal with all these fires you got burning. But you could. How would you know what you need? You run an integrated urinalysis panel. We go back now and we say, one of the common things, and this is what really sparked it for me when I was looking at this, because I've seen probably, I don't know, a few hundred cases of PCOS over my lifetime in my career. I've had really, really, really good results with people who have suffered from this. But what did I do? I balanced this thing. I balanced the triangle. I balanced the stresses. I got them out. But there's a common thread, and this is what you'll see in the literature. When you go on to the Mayo Clinic site, you start looking on this, they talk about insulin resistance. They say these people have insulin resistance problems. That's very common in PCOS. Well, what does that mean? It means adrenal function. And the adrenal gland, guys, deals with stress. It doesn't care what the stress is. It doesn't care if you stub your toe, if you eat a bad chili pepper, or if you're being chased by a bear. It doesn't matter to it. It's all the same. The body says, hey, look, fire's fire, pull the alarm. But when we see that happen, we think to ourselves, well, gosh, if my adrenals get out of control, then what are the hallmarks of adrenal stress? Fatigue, depression, anxiety, moodiness, irritability, lack of sleep, lack of rest. What are the signs of PCOS? Fatigue, depression, anxiety, moodiness, lack of sleep, lack of rest. My gosh, they're the same thing. And they're telling you it's a hormonal problem, and the adrenal gland is a hormonal regulator that deals with the bear. So how do you deal with PCOS, guys? You fix it. You improve fat digestion in the body. You decrease the carbohydrates, because I truly believe they are what's poking the bear. You cut those carbs way down. Increase fat, help the body to digest it, calm the mind, balance the body physically, fix the pelvic floor, and all of a sudden things like PCOS become nothing but a bunch of letters on a piece of paper. Whole lot better than being miserable and having heavy cycles and infertility. I'm Dr. Sean. Hope you enjoyed it.